Good evening, hello and welcome to the show. My name is Pratt, and as I always do, I like to say thank you to you for choosing to stay with Pan-African TV from morning till now. It's a Thursday, so definitely you know that it's a hard talk edition of the show. Now, these are trying times, not in my words, in the words of the president. These are very, very trying times. And all of us have had to readjust our lives in one way or the other as the world, not just Ghana, faces the coronavirus, COVID-19, we call it. Now, because it has directly affected all of us, and all of us, by all of us, I mean all of us, we all have been affected one way or the other. All of us are passionate about this subject, and all of us are eager to see the back of the virus. And so, you know, the communication, the conversations throughout this period has been about the COVID-19. Now, we are told consistently not to politicize the issue, which is all right. I agree. You know, this is one of those times that I genuinely, honestly believe that as a people, we hold our hands together and fight a common enemy. So I do agree about that. However, we are governed by a government which is run by a policy. So this evening, what we want to appreciate or what we want to understand, and by we, I mean myself and you, hopefully, want to understand is what is our government's policy, our government's plan in dealing with this. That's one leg of the conversation. Two, how effective has this plan or this policy been so far? And here, I think that all of us are judges. You know, we can all assess how effective or not effective our government has been. But more importantly, or perhaps the meat of this conversation is, what is the alternative? Let me rephrase that. What is the NDC's alternative to what has been done or what is being done so far? That's our question for this evening. And I have been highly, grazed, I love words, sorry, this evening by somebody who can answer this question for me perfectly, spot on. He is Mr. Alexander Segbefia. He happens to be former health minister and a member of the NDC's COVID-19 technical response team. Let me tell you a little bit more about him. He's a lawyer by profession. He's a former minister of health, like I said before. He was involved in the first fight, the first epidemic we had, Ebola, the Ebola crisis, in his capacity as Deputy Defense Minister and also Minister of Health. And he was responsible for the construction of the isolation center in Tamale, by the military and, of course, with support from NGOs. Sir, I'm very highly privileged to have you in the couch this evening. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you very much, and good evening to you and to your viewers.
Okay, let's dig right in. The whole of today, I was just reading around. That's my evidence. Just everything, trying to find the blueprints or a draft document, something that simply says this is the government's strategy, or this is the government's policy, or this is the government's plan towards fighting coronavirus. And perhaps I'm not a good researcher, but I found nothing.
I think you have to glean the government's position from the statements of the president, where he always harped on the 3 T's and ensuring that you could track, you could trace, you could treat, and you could isolate as they went along with the policy. So it was the 3 T's that they actually, the government had put forward as a policy. And it still remains a policy for them. Only in terms of strategy, it appears to have changed in terms of the strategy due to the lockdown being lifted. So you have a situation where, in order for them to, according to government, understand the virus, they locked down what they called was the epicenter, which was Accra and Kumasi, with Tema added, to kind of then do a lot more testing to get an idea of how the virus was behaving try and get some form of a pattern, try and understand it more, and then come out with a strategy or another policy as to how they were going to move. And it would appear that the policy now is that because they are doing more testing, because they are able to have a better idea of the nature of the virus, they feel that a lockdown is not the way forward, but all the other conditions that were in place should stay in place. The washing of hands, they've added one now, which is the wearing of mask, which has been added to the list.
Yes.
That is not a government policy. That's a Greater Accra policy. I don't know whether it's a government policy yet. It's a directive, or should I say, a recommendation by the president, which has now become a directive by Greater Accra. So we will see what the president says or what the government says subsequently. And that has been added to the other aspects that have been put forward. So there is a document somewhere, but for us who have to glean what the policy of government is, that is where I see the policy being, which is to track, trace, or and treat.
The 3 T's.
Yes,
the 3 T's. Now, my concern, and perhaps
track, test, treat.
Track, test,
treat. And I don't. It's not even track they use. They use trace.
Trace,
test, treat. And then they've added in science they added isolate. Or yes. So that is, so if the person is positive, then you isolate, basically. So that is the policy, and then how you go about it. So as to whether the decisions they have taken to date are the best, the jury is still out. Not about the decisions, but the timing of the decision.
Exactly. And you brought me right to my next question. I'm looking at this document here, which says, preparing for Ebola, the experiences of a national training team, and it's a very extensive document about everything that we had planned, sort of preempting Ebola arriving at our shores. And here it says that as one of its key aspects, it had the training of health workers. And all of, this side just details from September all through to November, no, take that back, till December. All the trainings that were done in different hospitals in different regions of the country, preparing for if, and perhaps when Ebola were to arrive in the country. Now, the first recorded incident, by the WHO was in Guinea sometime in March, I think. I want to confirm. I underline that. Yes, in March 2014. Now, we started preparing a couple of months down the line. I think 5 months or so down. That's September is when we started, actually training and all. But there were some preliminary activities that happened even before that.
Well before that.
Yes, well before the September. I underlined them. I can't find.
The education started.
Yes.
The education with regard to the washing of hands and being careful and the touching of bodies when you go to funerals and all that.
Yes. So really, my question is, this is a document I can point to. This is a well laid out plan, with specific strategies, where to go, what to do, and even specific training for specific health workers. It wasn't a blanket, let's train health workers. It was different trainings for the different sectors, the frontliners, even all the way to those who deal with dead bodies, the mortuary workers and all of that. Why don't we have the same document today for coronavirus, which seems to be more, not dangerous, just more elusive? Can I say that?
I can't answer that because I'm not in the chair as a minister, or for that matter, and it may exist, it's just not been made public. But if it's there, it should be. If for nothing at all, it gives confidence to us in the public that you have a game plan and you're on top of issues. That does not appear to be the case. And one of the issues we raised as the COVID team was that the government appears to be reactive. It's not, much as they are trying to get in front of the virus, they are always being reactive. They are not being proactive. And it all has a lot to do with timing. Considering what had happened in China...
The vice president disagrees. He says we are chasing the virus.
Yes, if they are chasing it, they are reactive.
He says we are not waiting.
No. They are chasing it.
He says we are not waiting, but we are chasing the virus.
They're chasing it. They shouldn't. They should be waiting for it to arrive. In other words, they are in front and it's coming. And they know about it. But they are chasing it. They are reactive. They are not being proactive. So he agrees with me, actually. So they are being reactive. And it's because of the delay in making some decisions. Now, what would the government of, or a different approach, what would have been a different approach?
Oh, we will get to that, sir. That's the whole meat of our conversation. Your approach, that's the whole meat of this conversation. I'm just looking generally, you know, and of course, you can't be an insider in this instance. No. But just sitting back and watching and
I
being
think that there's a lot,
expert.
you see, with Ebola, a lot, and we left a lot of things that should have been continued. Because we had the interministerial group continued after Ebola's scare was over. But we didn't disband the interministerial group. We had an Ebola center. We had a building that was dealing strictly with Ebola. We kept the team, and my deputy was in charge of that whole Ebola thing. It had a plan, and we had to train the staff almost, I think, either every 6 months or every quarter. There was a training program for the staff, and every hospital had to identify an area of the hospital which was going to be deemed an isolation area. Because even though we had built an isolation center in Tema and we built one in Tamale, and we were still working on the one in Kumasi, in the first instance, they wouldn't go there. They would be in a hospital. So we said every hospital or district level, tertiary level, regional level, if somebody comes and has Ebola, what do? You had to have a place where you actually, everybody, you had to have a set of, a team, sets in each hospital who would have training every 6 months or every 4 months. I can't remember now, but it's in the document. And their duty was that they would learn how to put on PPPs. Because getting a PPP, you give PPPs now, people are taking them and putting them off. Even the mask, even gloves. They're taking them and putting them on wrongly. So these were people who were trained for that purpose. And once the training was done, they got other staff and they became trainers. So they were then to train others. So, and anytime people are transferred or move, you had to make sure that you kept the number intact. So in that regard, there was a plan and we had executed it. Fortunately, God being so good, we never had Ebola.
Yes.
And so perhaps people thought that maybe it was a waste of resources, it was not in the right direction, or they would use funding for different purpose, thinking that it wouldn't come. But even when you listen to what, I've seen a clip of what George Bush said, Jr., I've heard what Obama said very clearly. It was clear that even in certain parts of the world, they had already begun to see signs that some ailment may come one day which would create a problem. So you should plan ahead for it. That's why some of us are a bit surprised at the extent to which it has gone in the United States, because they were actually forewarned by previous leaders and should have got their act together a lot better. And that's why anytime I hear people quoting what the United States is doing, are they quoting it as reference as to what we should not do, or are they quoting it as reference as to what is right?
We should do.
Because they are not exactly the best example of what is right.
I mean, they are leading. They are leading in all the
yeah.
numbers.
So when people want to quote what is happening in other countries, it should be in reference as to what in that area has it taught us, because they have good areas which you can pick, and then they have certain policy decisions which perhaps haven't helped them a lot. And I think that the world in general didn't react as quickly, but those countries that could, and many of them are what you would deem to be, in inverted commas, socialist countries, seem to have been more ready because they have spent years dealing with people issues for their countries. So look at Cuba. Yes, they have, and they know how to, but they are in a position where they can even export people to help countries who are in difficulty. And we are talking of the developed first world, if excuse me to say, countries, where we've seen Cuban doctors go in to assist. So perhaps we have to look at the whole concept of what, as a country, we need to be doing. And forgive me for saying it, but it's a fact. You see, when Kwame Nkrumah built schools and brought education, he has been a foundation for us to where we are now because of the secondary school system and the free education, Kuku Marketing Board scholarships, etc., etc. When you look at the amount of hospitals that John Mahama, the Mahama Mills administration, decided to put up, you can't but say that if this infrastructure were not there, how would we have even coped? I guess they say that when you don't have something, you don't miss it. But this one, you would have missed it.
Big time.
You would have missed it. Because a lot of money was spent in sending doctors out to train in Cuba. We have doctors, medical schools being put up here. A lot of nurses were invested in at various levels. And that in itself is why they say the Ghana health systems are more advanced than most African countries, perhaps with the exception of South Africa and Egypt and one or two others. But
no, but our vice president says we are doing way better than South Africa.
Well, I'm not in a position to judge because I haven't looked at the figures or the stats and the numbers in terms of population and whatnot. Their numbers should always be larger than ours because they have a larger population.
I think when we're trailing around the 500s, they were within the 2000s.
Well, what is the total population of South Africa?
Exactly.
Is the first question I ask. So in those cases, you look at percentages and then weight on percentages. But yes, we may be doing a lot better. And then also you then have to look at the testing regime. How many tests are they doing compared to us? And that is coming back to the system or the issue. Our testing regime must be a lot more robust in terms of the numbers.
So you take me straight there. So we know what is being done, or we can see a path. You know, of course, you've mentioned the 3 T's and I. How effective do you think this has been so far? How effective do you think we've been with this fight against coronavirus? You think we could have...
I think the government is making strides. But as I said, they've been slow. This should... Once it got into Europe and the numbers started playing up, they should have already been ordering kits, reagents. We should have been wearing masks 5 weeks ago.
How about just shutting our borders? That's what Vietnam did.
From the first case.
That's what Vietnam did in January. They shut their borders.
You should just have shut down the borders. If you have shut down the borders for the last, say, 6 weeks or 8 weeks, we wouldn't have a case. Or if we had, the contact tracing would be minimal, like how Nigeria got Ebola, but they were able to quickly deal with it and kill it down. Yes. But to make that decision, it's a big call, but you've got to make the call. Because the alternative...
Leadership.
Well, I didn't go there. The alternative is dire, and that's why we are here. We took too long in closing our borders. We took too long in closing Accra and Kumasi, if that's what we were going to do. The manner in which we closed Accra and Kumasi was wrong. We should have shut them down the day of the announcement. But give people, the 2 days that they gave people time to go out should just have been give people time to sort themselves out in Accra, those that were already in it, and then shut it down in the 2 days. But the shutting down of Accra should have been done on the day the announcement came. Same for Kumasi. And people would have been stranded in the wrong place. But yeah, it's a tough call, but you've got to make the call. But once you didn't do that and you let people go out into their regions, Kaya traveling, this person traveling, that person traveling, you had a problem. Schools are saying, oh, we won't allow you to use our dormitories. You've got an executive instrument, order it. Make the order. That's what you went for your executive instrument for, or whatever. Or get a way to get them to understand, or call them, have the discussion, pick schools and put these people in there. Get mattresses for them. And you can always fumigate after the event.
Okay, now that we are here, let's talk about the instrument that was laid before Parliament and all the debates that as a former Minister of Health and as somebody who would have had to deal with this directly, what do you think of that document?
I think that the instrument is the powers of the executive instrument are too vast for the purpose. This is to deal with an ailment, an illness. I'm still at a loss as to how, if somebody speaks against the flag of Ghana or whatever, the person can go to prison for 4 years. And what has that got to do with COVID-19?
Well, now.
The instrument should be directed towards COVID-19, period. And you'd use the powers only in relation to COVID-19. It should be that restrictive. Because if the framers of the Constitution wanted to give the president those type of powers, it would have been in the Constitution. It wasn't. It must be limited to a time span, very strict. It must be under the supervision of Parliament at any time T, even if it's an executive power. Because even under the emergency powers, under the Constitution, the police people are Parliament. So how do you now give a whole president those powers without there seeming to be a check and balance? No. I don't want to go into that because then we start entering into deep politics. And I'm trying to be COVID-19 this thing. But it's
I like that. Let's stay on COVID-19.
But for me, that was the executive instrument is way too vast. Whether they should even have used that section to actually do what they wanted to do and the way it has been done is, for me, not right. Because if you're not careful and it's in an election year, so straight away it begins to raise the antennas of people. What exactly is going on here? So they should have been sensitive to those concerns before passing that type of an executive instrument. Fortunately, we have the courts, and if issues arise, then we go and see what they have to say.
We can go to our courts. So now let's get into other specifics. Let's talk, for instance, about the president heading the team. Because he's the face we see all the time. He's the one that addresses us. He's the one that speaks to us. This morning, I was watching one of this other TV because I like to check out the competition every now and then. And one of our ministers was, in a bit to elaborate how very deeply involved the president is. He says he heads the meetings himself every day. And I'm wondering, is that ideal? Do you think that by itself is... Okay.
Definitely.
Okay.
He should head the meetings.
Okay.
It's not by mistake that Trump is at the addresses when they are doing even the national addresses. He's there. It's not by mistake that Boris Johnson was there till he got the illness and went off. It's not. Because this is the time you need leadership. So for him to chair those meetings, I think it's in order.
Okay. And address us?
Address us? It's in order.
It's in order.
I don't think they address us enough.
Okay.
And on one aspect, and that is the data and the numbers. I can't for the life of me still, notwithstanding the explanations given by Noguchi, why we don't have a daily reporting system. I don't understand it. Because if you haven't finished doing work on, you have 50 cases, but you want to finish on the other 20. Give us the 30 that are finished.
Do you think you are playing politics with the figures? I mean, these are the arguments that are being used against China, for instance.
I don't. It is
well, conspiracy theories are saying that maybe for economic reasons, maybe for political reasons, maybe for whatever reasons, we are not being given the figures straight up. And here I reference, what's his name, Dr. Sorry, I saw that somewhere here. Is it Dr. Kofi? I'll find the name in a minute. Forgive me, sir. But he is one of our, where's this? Yes, there it is. Dr. Kofi Boni, the senior research fellow at, our foremost testing center, who came out to say that they test positive cases every day. In fact, here, I'll quote him. He says that there are some days that you get so many positives that you wonder. And then he also said, we submit these results of tests each day to the Ghana Health Services. However, it seems the Ghana Health Services decides to wait a while based on criteria that he's not privy to. So, I mean, are we saying that we are piecemealing the actual information? And for what reason?
The impression created by the manner of reportage of the figures and what is going on gives the impression of information management going on. So they are given the info. It appears that they are given the information as and when. And the statement I make can be justified when you listen to Insi Asare, who says, we had figures for maybe 2-3 days. Okay? We decided not to tell because the president was going to speak. And because the president was going to speak, we held on to the figures and let him announce it, even though we'd had them for a number of days. What was significant about that was that we had these figures at 600 and something at a certain point. And then at 600 and something, for a space of a short period, the figure changed to 1042. There was a kind of, whoa, what's going on? And straight away, the 1042 was removed and 800 and something came out. Fine. And then 3-4 days later, the same 1042 number appears in the president's address. And we are then told by the advisor to the president that they had held the figure back. The question is, when did they hold the figure back? Was it the previous, when it was 600, or was it at the point of 800 even? This kind of reportage creates doubt in the minds of I'm talking of really professional people who want to do proper statistical issues. They can't reconcile. The figures are changing. And they do. What is this whole brouhaha that we've had for 3 days to the point where they have to go and bring Nkuchi? There are two things that come out of that process. One, either you are playing with the information, and if you are not, and even the information is accurate, then your reportage is zilch, zero. Because you have been able to report in a way where there's total confusion with journalists, with professionals. Nobody seems to understand what was going on. And everybody couldn't even reconcile the figures. The director of Noguchi said the maximum they do is between 2,000. They've been able to push it to 3,000. The next couple of days later, the virologist, who is the professor there, comes and says, we can do 100,000 in 2 days.
What's happening?
Exactly. So
help us understand what's happening.
Now, you see, his explanation is okay. The point is, when you started the polling process, when did you start? How effective? How many did you use in a day? The language of all the people you speak to is different. So somebody talks of samples. Somebody talks of
the terminologies.
Yes, somebody talks of tests. Somebody talks of individuals who have been tested. And all of them mean different things in different contexts. So, once you get into the mess that they have created, it's important that when you're going to report, you clear the air. Why? Because we also know that samples were taken from the Upper East to Upper West, By the time they had traveled, and that's why the issue of drones or movement of samples and getting even new stations elsewhere came up. By the time they had gotten down to, I think, Tamale, or where they were supposed to get, they were no good. They could not be used. They are dried up. So we need to know actually the total number of samples ever taken in Ghana for COVID-19.
Okay. So
Then tell us that if you took, for example, 100,000 samples, you should be able to also tell us that of the 100,000 samples we took, 100 of them have been discarded because they were no good.
why?
Then you need to know.
Why is this so important?
Because if you want to know how much of the ailment you are getting, you have to be clear in your mind whether you are duplicating figures, how many, the test you have, and the people that you actually, one person is tested more than once. They are,
the duplication.
there's duplication. So it may not have been a problem if they had been reporting correctly from the beginning. But because there's an element of mistrust now in the figures, notwithstanding what Noguchi has said, and we accept that, okay, there can be more tests done, fine. But tell us, we have tested, because we buy reagents for testing. We have tested in Ghana, we have done 120 tests, 120,000 tests. But 30,000 of them are duplicate tests, duplicate or triplicate or quadruple. The actual number of individuals who have been tested is 80,000. Or the actual number of individual samples we have collected is 80,000, of which only 60-something thousand have been tested as individuals. And the remaining 18,000 are still waiting to be tested.
But is there nothing to be said for crisis management at this point?
Well, there's a lot.
I mean, you have a former health minister.
There's
You have
something
a
to be said
politician here. You tell me, would there be something?
But in crisis, the most important issue in crisis is information. It's information. And you have to know that under crisis management, if you get information wrong, you are actually going to cause fear and panic. If Insi Hassani is talking about a module of 10% of the nation is going to get affected, and that is maybe a general model for maybe, I don't even know where that model, the source. But the general model he put for is a model. And you say that that is what Ghana is expecting. In his own words, and you're an advisor to a president, of course you cause fear and panic. That is where you manage the information. You make sure that you are giving it in a succinct manner. You say, look, there are models all over the world. In some of the models, they even say a country may be able to even get 10% of its population affected, the way that the virus is going. But we in Ghana know that it's not the case, because the steps we have taken have managed it, and we know that we are nowhere close to that type of model. So everybody is shooting in the dark with all kinds of answers to it, but we are seeing a difference in certain parts of Africa and Ghana. We can all tell that the fatalities are very few. That's a plus for Africa. If you look at Europe and America, and even what happened in China, and nobody seems to be able to explain. There's a lot of speculation. Some say weather, some say youthful population, some say what's it called? The rain, or name it. People have put various reasons, but nobody is sure. But what is clear is that there doesn't seem to be a lot of fatalities. But we've also had evidence of some countries giving that impression, and all of a sudden, boom, it spikes. Because this virus is a bad boy.
Very bad boy. Terrible boy.
You know, he's a bad boy because he has the ability to chop and change as he wishes. And it's almost as if they are all talking to each other, like they have a radar. So you go and infect these people, we'll sacrifice you. Like, you know how the ants behave in the colony. The workers can go and be sacrificed, but the queen is always looked after, and the soldiers and whatnot. So you sacrifice, you just go and infect a few people. And then when we are ready, now let's hit. And it's almost as if by telepathy, then the thing just hits you. So you cannot just immediately draw that type of deduction. So you plan for the worst, and you hope for the best. That is all we are saying. And in order to do that, you give us cogent information for us to be able to draw the graphs and look at what is happening to us. Because we do not know how Africa is going to react in 4 weeks. And while we are planning, while this is all going on, we have to plan that they are now thinking that this nature of this virus, in the next winter, they believe it's coming back. It's not like Ebola, where it dies and you maybe 2-3 years. No, it fades and then it. This one, they believe it's like the flu. So they think that possibly the next winter in Europe, it will hit again. If that is what is going to happen, till such time, that is why some countries decided we'll go for herd mentality. Dangerous, because you're sacrificing your elderly or those who don't have the high enough immune system to deal with it. But you try and isolate them. Are you going to isolate them every winter? The hope is that by then you have a vaccine, so you can vaccinate them, and then they can everybody can be mainstream. That's a strategy that some want to use, but you don't have the vaccine yet. So it's a dangerous strategy for your population. That's why Italy is in the mess that it is. So we understand the difficulties, but educators give us the facts. But when the people who are communicating are giving us wrong information, contradicting themselves, nobody in the media went and gave the figures.
No.
Nobody in any political party. It was government that gave the figures. And their figures, in CSRA was asked straight, are we counting duplicate figures based on? He said yes. I remember the deputy minister was also asked when he was pushed. He said, oh yes, it looks like they're duplicates. So when you are explaining it, it's not the question of people can't do simple mathematics. It's the question of the information that people have obtained and are now querying. People can do the maths. The maths was not adding up. So come and explain. And we thank God that, and I know him very well, Professor Ambufo, he's a man of God. We were in school together, one of our seniors in school. Brilliant chap. But the explanation even raised some questions. Because where it is now, they should have given us all the figures. All. And put people's, so the statisticians.
Put our minds at rest. Put our minds
How many tests have we done in the country?
There's something else that bothers me just a little bit. And this one has to do with culturally sensitive policies or approaches to dealing with situations. Now, I've had people say to me that they feel as though we just took wholesale, even facing weddings, technologies, like social distancing. How do you explain that to somebody who has no vocabulary in English? How do you explain social distance, even for somebody who, what does it mean? So let's look at.
I was surprised to see that, and maybe I'm wrong, and if I'm wrong, I stand to be corrected, and I'll hold my hand up any day. But was there a specific line item of amount of money from the 100 million for education? Was there?
That has come up strongly, this issue about
because education is still not good enough. And you have to do it in the local languages.
But I have heard reports that
not enough.
There was nothing set out for education. That's
what I'm saying. They have to
somewhere.
Educate, and that this money that is come, you have to spend a lot on media. You can order the media to do certain things. But the printing of leaflets, the getting things out, the megaphones, the talking to people in the street, empowering NCCE, and all of that, that is a big issue for our COVID team. The education is low. The mass testing is low. You keep saying mass. What is the meaning of mass? How many? And when you look at our population and you do the person, it's not enough. Are we ever going to get to the point of using rapid test kits which are approved by the FDA, and when? Tell us. When are you ordering? Because you say you order PPEs, and yet they are all on the ground, and people have given us donations, and we have a fund, and yet what we are finding is the hospitals are saying we don't have enough. We haven't got some even at all, and so on. So what has happened to what you had? So information, come out. I have given Kolebu 25 PPEs. But if you realize that 25 PPEs is a drop in the ocean, you can't come and tell us. You cannot. Because Kolebu may need 2,000 to cope just for 1 month. And so if you go and say you have given them 200, people are going to say, are you serious? Are you really fighting this disease? So you don't tell us. And then when you leave a vacuum in reportage, it's filled. Nature abhors vacuums. That is why they should give us daily reports. That website or an individual must come, and we should know the time. I should be able to know that at 8 o'clock in the evening or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Ghana Health Service is going to update its website, or there's going to be a report, 5-minute reportage, get all the media, the best one come and say, now there was no cases today. We had 10 cases today. We had 100 cases today. We didn't have any today. Okay. That is what should happen at a set time on a set day. As for the ministerial chat, if you are doing it 2-3 times a week, fine. But we should also be specific on that. The only one who can decide when and how, and I agree, is the president. If he's coming to do serious issues like he does on his list, fine. But as a government, they should be telling us through the agencies. Every day we must, it's important. And it would have, if they were doing that, it would have gotten rid of this whole issue of whether the figures they were given were right. But if you have already told us that you are holding information just for the president to come and announce it, then already you have defeated. That means that your priorities are wrong.
We're already in trouble.
Your priorities are wrong.
We're already in trouble.
You're in trouble.
Now let's talk about the very my favorite topic in all of this, the vulnerable, the vulnerable, and how we have handled the vulnerable before and during, all of this. Social interventions are great. However, we have had cause to worry about the social interventions that have been done in this instance, where you have the sharing of food by itself, that exercise alone, being so problematic, where people see the pictures and see the videos and like, my goodness, are we distributing food or are we distributing the virus? Here.
Let me say that the COVID team in our document to government indicated that there has to be, say, a lockdown, but it must have a human face. And it's not a one-size-fits-all, because we had to look at the cultural positions of us as Ghanaians and the dynamics that play in our country. It is clear that the government tried to do things, but as usual, the idea is never bad. The execution is always the problem. So we always say, and I always say even in government, that look, let me say for example, free senior high school. The idea is actually in the constitution. Somebody decides, I'll do it now. Somebody decides, let's do it staggered. How you implement it is what matters, not necessarily the idea. So when you have an idea that, okay, I'm going to do a lockdown, and I know I have vulnerable people in my institution, you immediately, and you don't have time, go to those that look after vulnerable people already. Churches, NGOs, call them immediately. Where do you send your food to? How do you do it? How are you going to help us? The money side we will look after. Don't give it to your government people just like that. Know how much you are giving to the MCs and DCs. Know how much you are going to give. It is also a political thing. So if you bring in NGOs, churches, and those that already do it, don't give to a church that doesn't do that job. There are churches who don't know how to do that. You must know that this church does that in this locality. You must know that this traditional leader is known by his
already
people.
In the business.
Is already in the business of giving those that are already in the identify them and let them be your spearhead. You can easily identify them by going to the traditional rulers. They know the people operating in their system. If you are feeding my people, I know. If for nothing at all, many of them will go and pay you crap. They say, oh, I've come. I'm doing this. Okay, thank you. So you know they exist.
Go ahead.
Yes. So that is why we and our flag bearer had said, go to the assemblymen. The assemblymen are technically non-partisan. Now you see why we were shouting that we don't want, excuse me to say.
Scary cough.
Exactly. It's because I'm talking a lot.
Sorry.
The non-partisan, what's it called? They are supposed to be non-partisan. But they are accepted more by the community because they believe they are. Or some people do. Even though they know that they've been backed by A or B. actually when they operate. So they must be part of it, and they are the lower level. So if you bring them all in and put in to get a system that deals with that, go to Electricity Corporation and ask them, how do you collect your electricity? They go everywhere and collect electricity. They are able to find everybody in the nook and cranny and this thing. How do you get there? What system do you have that helps you to deal with them? Once they tell you what you can then, I'm not saying that it's easy, but there was a different way of implementing what they did. This was what our flag bearer had been talking about at that when he mentioned. So we gave them all the pointers. Unfortunately, because it's food, it has a political color. So even at a certain point, when you had MPP and NDC people going to share food, because we wanted to give the impression that it was a non-partisan issue, to allow people to feel a bit comfortable. In the areas where that didn't happen, people misbehaved. It's a fact. Our MPs knew it. Zanetta was brave enough to actually say it. They challenged the others, came out and said, look, it's happening in my constituency too. In Asawasi, in Ododiodo, in this, in that. And it's different when an MP is making a donation as an MP. It's different when it's government food.
Yes.
So I think the handling of that whole area was problematic and could have been dealt with, because the worst part of this whole issue across board was that the moment you had to talk about food and sharing, social distancing became a non-existent phenomenon in the system. Non-existent. The crowds, it was just impossible. Fights broke out. So one thing, and I should say it on air, is that let's give thanks to God for watching over Ghana. We are really blessed. Because indeed, if we want to punish ourselves, which is what we were doing, and he took his eye off us for just a flicker,
we would have been in serious trouble.
What I've seen in the markets is serious trouble. Yes. So I'm clear. It's not the idea. It was a good idea. It was recommended, but the humane face, the way it was done, the idea of what it's how it should be done. Why give cook food?
Exactly.
Give somebody rice. Let him go and cook it. He will know whether he used 1 cup or he's going to use half a cup, or he'll cook the whole thing and store it in the fridge. Give him a tin of sardine. He'll know how to open it, put some down. Some people have homes. For those who are not even who are homeless, some of them have relationships with people who cook. So what they do is that if I have my 2 plantain, I can come and give it to you. She will take half and give me half and cook. So when I go, I'll go and collect my one. At least I'll eat. Those that have no way, you identify them and then you feed them. The way to be able to understand that is to deal with the people who already do it. So this one we feed. This old lady, she can never leave her room, so we go and give her food. This
or better still, just change the system and let's all go socialism. I'll take a break here so you can drink some water. I'll take a break so you can drink some water. I said it. Let's take a quick commercial break at this point. I want Mr. Segbefia to drink some water. Also, I want you to join the conversation. So please, kindly, do use the WhatsApp number in front of the screen. Send us a WhatsApp, send us a text. I will read it. I promise. Say that to be right back.
Today, we can't trust sources of water anymore. Confidence is gone due to human activities. Same human activities introduces well-mechanized machines which purifies water. I bring to you ultimate natural mineral water. Deep from underground, tasty, well purified and corporately packaged. Ultimate natural mineral water. Let's drink the new. For book, call 020-379-1888 or 0244-515-801. Ultimate natural mineral water. My water, your water, our water.
it's incredible! Bang on target!
I'm home. Come to me. Oh, and you damn come honey on his heart. Dang.
Castle. So when you mean this will be a bit of a hanuma, can one carry an asset? I don't pay an answer. You remember,
Oh, what happened? Try me, maybe. What for cocoa bit? When it's blue, and answer some legend. Young Casabe men say, what for cocoa capsules? A dray and upper two, and you minute two, and me a friend say, Calamity two, driving what in a jum was seen to me, Yuma. When my drew way, was this in Bedao, Amadeus or DM, what the
A drawing and ya ma a pin for, one warmer and manu for, a name more fra when you fear doom.
Ghana Fadia to Munti, cover 4 Anthony Dean said, Malay.
Oh, back.
Did I just say that? Welcome back to the show. Forgive me. Good evening. Welcome back to the show. We have been talking, about dealing with COVID-19 and all the issues that arise from dealing with COVID-19. We have been graciously joined in the studio by Mr. Alex Segbefia, former Minister of Health, also member of NDC's technical response team to COVID-19. So far, we've been looking at the policy, if indeed there is. We've been looking at government's plan of dealing with the epidemic so far. We've been looking at how effective or not it has been so far. Well, for this next leg of the conversation, my concern would be this team, this technical response team, that you're part of, and that's also obviously your alternative, and your alternative, and then so far your involvement in all of this, also the lifting of the restrictions. So let's start with our viewers. Just let 2 or 3 views come in.
Sure.
And then we'll look at the team. First of all, who constitutes the team? Why was it set up? How has your involvement been so far? All right. So this one says, government is massaging the COVID-19 figures just to mislead the public. Ghanaians are watching. His name is Faze in Kajiji Sena East District. Okay. This one says, hello, this is Abdul Karim from White People Are Doing a Great Job. Government and its communicators are not helping Ghanaians. Discrepancies in the data they are feeding us with. Okay, this one also says, good evening. The government has had a knee-jerk partisan response to this COVID-19. The protocols are lacking in details. The interpretations of the president's statements vary interpretation by those who carry it out, and they confuse many. Today, the Accra minister's issue on compulsory mask wearing is to see power at play. It's not a preventive measure. The mask Mr. Segbefia is wearing appears appropriate. Others are a clear failure. I hope you're not referring to mine. With about 4 million people in Greater Accra, what consideration was taken in the supply and availability of the masks, the individual's ability to purchase the masks, the useful life cycle of the masks in use? I have seen firsthand the unhygienic quality production, package, and sale of these randomly made masks that may put lives at risk than be preventive. So issuing authoritative directives that puts people under undue pressure of a fine or arrest and a false belief that the wearing of the mask is the panacea shows the incompetence of those who have issued this immediate and compulsory order. And the name is H. Jacobs. I agree with what you're saying. Okay, this one says, no matter how the NDC puts out their case, no matter how the MPP defends their actions and inactions, only time will tell. The president has told us he doesn't know how to bring back the dead. Well, that's true. And that alone is not politics. Nobody knows how to bring back the dead. Protect yourself, your life is in your hands. His name is Prince in Asham. So Prince, basically you are saying that your life is in your hands. All right, got it. Good evening. One, government didn't close borders and airports at the right time. That is why the virus has spread like this. Two, Eastern region should be locked down or should have been locked down, but it was not done. Accra and Kumasi lockdown should not have been lifted. We are at risk. His name is Cosmos. Okay, sir. So, the team.
Well, you know, for a number of reasons. One, because I always say first, we are Ghanaian and we have a role to play. We are stakeholders. Two, the team represents the largest political party in opposition in Ghana, which has been in government before, and therefore a lot of our people are looking to us to see what is our position and how are we looking moving forward. In fact, this was acknowledged by the president himself when he met with the political parties and said that they had a role to play. And three, he himself as well as president asked for a non-partisan approach on this matter. In order for that to be done, the flag bearer of our party decided, look, let me put together a team who will feed in from, who will get information and have certain expertise already, but to get information from others within our party and have a focal point to actually assist governments with regard to, we are a technical team with regard to recommendations to help government with issues. So we have had 2 papers given to government. When we inaugurated, the very next day, we launched our first paper to government indicating a number of issues. The flag bearer himself has been given various recommendations as well in his capacity. And less than a week ago, or about roughly a week, we sent out our second paper to government as to the way forward. And that was just shortly before the announcement on Sunday of the lifting of the lockdown. So we have tried, we've talked, our paper had covered issues of how we're going to deal with the education, how tracking had issues with it in terms of the data, we talked about general health issues, we talked about the social mitigation efforts that have been made. It's all encapsulated in our paper to government. And many of the advice or many of the issues we had raised were taken on by government and have been used by government. So we think that it's been a useful committee in place, and the government has listened to some of the recommendations we've given, and think therefore we have worked well to complement the efforts that government is putting in place. So, and it's 11-member team. The chairman is Honorable Prosper Bani, and our lady in charge of coordinating us and is Mauna Treba, very talented young lady, as you know.
Amazing.
And she's ensuring that we keep on track. So I don't want to call everybody's name, because if I miss somebody out, I'm in trouble.
You are in trouble. You are in trouble.
We have.
Please don't let me lead you into temptation.
We have 11, and I've just mentioned the 2 because we have our coordinator, and then we have the chairman. So I've mentioned those 2, and I think that they've actually had an impact. So you tend to find, that's why sometimes you see me biting my tongue, because I try to wear as much as possible, not always, a totally biased one political side situation. But I point out the facts as they are, which and areas of improvement. Like I've said, that we believe that there should be daily reports, and that's all. This is in our report. So all the things I have mentioned are not things that we haven't written to government about.
I mean,
on the issue of the mask, the Greater Accra directive. You are now getting to the realm of federal and unitary states. We have a unitary government, and I'm not yet sure, I have to look at the laws, that the Greater Accra can issue an edict that anytime you enter into Greater Accra you must wear a mask or not. It's a good, I actually support it, and I'll tell you why shortly. But as to whether it can be done in that manner, or it should be one that should be done under the presidency's directive, I'm not sure. So if the presidency has come out and said, I recommend you to do something, I don't know whether Greater Accra of its own volition can then decide that if you're in Greater Accra, you should do this, and if you don't, then what is the sanction? And I have to, in fairness, they may be able to, I don't know, but I have to check and see whether the AMA or the Greater Accra regional minister can put out such it's within his powers. I don't know. So it will be interesting to find out what the legal implications are, because they have wide powers, but I don't know whether to extend to that type of thing. If somebody's coming from Kumasi, doesn't have a mask, and he stopped at Accra, then is he in breach when he's still in Ghana?
I mean, the other question is, what if Kumasi, also wakes up one day and says, well, in our jurisdiction, you have to wear gloves?
So there are question marks.
Yeah.
You might have peculiar issues to your area, but that is why we gave the executive instrument. So then it's for the president to make those rules and regulations, and then people can follow. So you can lock down Accra and Kumasi, but it was done by the president. Greater Accra cannot lock down itself, so you cannot come in. So I'm not sure, and I've left it open, but I think there are question marks there. But why do I? You see, the issue of mask, for me, people I think get it wrong. If you don't educate people that you wear the mask not to protect yourself, that's not why you wear the mask. You wear the mask to protect others. Every time you speak, vapor comes out of your mouth. Every time you shout, more goes out. And if you cough, even more goes out further. Now, we haven't done mass testing. I don't know whether you have it.
Well, I've been tested.
But what you didn't get infected 2 days after. Exactly. You don't know.
That's what I mean.
I don't know whether you have it. You don't know whether I have it. There is no sign on anybody's forehead that says you have or you don't have.
True.
But if you wear a mask, if I cough like I just did and I have it, it will not go more than maybe 6 inches from my mask, because most of it is going to be captured in my mask. The same reason our parents always say, if you are going to cough, take your handkerchief and put it in front of your face. Don't cough out. So if you have the mask, it restricts the vapor from moving a certain distance. It is shorter than when you don't have it. Same with a cough, same with shouting. So I am protecting you from any vapor or any droplets that I may have or not have. So when you wear it, you're doing the same for me. You're protecting me. But if you think that if you are going to wear it, you won't get it, then you are missing the point. That's not what this, for me, is about. So people should look at it the other way around. Now, if we are all wearing it, then it is one more step of preventative. In other words, you are wearing, I'm wearing, so not everybody is wearing it, so the vapor doesn't go far, and less people can be infected.
Nobody's distributing this.
Nobody's distributing it. That's all it is. If you look at it from that angle, then it makes sense to wear the mask. It even makes sense to wear a homemade mask, because you are not saying that the kind of mask I'm wearing is the one which is professional. So basically, it stops you from also getting it. So that
the homemade mask is like walking around with a handkerchief.
Exactly. But if you have this, after 8 hours, you have to discard it. How many people can? Which country is going to afford that? America has now started recycling this type of mask and cleaning them and putting them out, because you cannot afford to be making them constantly. 8 hours, you get rid of it. Some even less. These are professional things. But if you have a homemade mask, all you're saying is, I'm walking around with a handkerchief in front of my face. That's all you're saying.
That's all.
And it will stop some spread. And every step you so I give the example. When you go and wash your hands in a bathroom, how many people clean the door before they come out? The door handle.
Nobody.
But it's the same door handles people open and close when they go in. So if you don't clean the door handle, the moment you touch it, you have contaminated yourself after washing your hands. Do you say people shouldn't wash their hands again because of that? No. So it is not foolproof, but it helps everybody a little bit more. That's all.
This has been for me the best education on this max thing.
Well,
promise.
it is not about protecting yourself. Protect others.
The others.
Yes, that's
Protect
what it's about.
Other people. Because
Yes.
I had a doctor here, you know, early days, who said to me, "You wear the mask when you have it.
That was the education. But how do you know you have it?
You don't know.
The incubation days is 14 days. Some people
You
say
don't
more.
know.
So if you don't know, when do you wear it? After you've got it and spread it? No. Wear it from day one. It's
Absolutely.
uncomfortable. It's not a nice feeling. But we are in difficult times.
We are in tough times.
And don't put down homemade mask. Wear. What you shouldn't wear is a mask that can affect your health. That's why the inner bit, you should make sure it's one that doesn't like have a dyed substance on it or whatever, because then you're inhaling all the dye and whatnot. But once you follow the guidelines which have been given by WHO, I am 100% for mask. That is my
I'm a new
position.
convert right now. I'm a new convert. But beyond issuing papers to government, are you directly involved in any way? The team, are you
No.
directly involved in any way beyond, you know,
We look at
putting your suggestions on paper?
Our flag bearer actually looks at what is happening, and people make a lot of requests to him to assist, and he's gone out like with PPEs, face mask, sanitizers, boots. He's gone around delivering, even foodstuffs. He doesn't deal with the cook side, no, but he deals predominantly with giving foodstuffs to people in their homes. to
I've seen
help
the
them.
videos.
Yes,
I've
so
seen the videos.
our flag bearer has done a lot of that, and just as a stopgap measure, because we thought by now all these gaps would have been filled. We didn't expect that there would be a hospital talking about PPEs at this stage. We thought that with the, is it Jack Ma and other donations and the money that we've been given, a lot of orders would have poured in, and we would have PPEs at least for the frontline staff. So it's been that the pace. That's why I keep saying that it's not the decisions, it's this, it's when and how quickly these things are happening. That for me is the main
the
issue that government has now.
Let's talk about lifting of the restriction.
Yeah.
What do
Well,
you think?
The restriction we felt was premature. It was premature because even if you wanted data to make a decision, we don't have it yet. Enough of it, we think. You will need a lot more data to make certain decisions. You would need to be able to have a lot more testing ability to do enough mass testing in a way which is meaningful. You needed to get a lot more information from the lockdown areas than you have got to be able to make some decision. And you had an escalating figure. So, and it was escalating and increasing because of the way it was being the reportage as well. That didn't help. So when you look at it in that picture, it appeared to be premature because there are specific guidelines. If you have made a decision already to go into lockdown, WHO gives specific guidelines as to what you should be looking for before you remove the lockdown. We don't meet the criteria.
Well, the argument is that we didn't even meet the criteria for the lockdown effect. We said we were doing partial lockdown.
Well,
So already our own lockdown was a special breed. It was in a class of its own.
When you say partial lockdown, you see, the word lockdown means a lot of things. From the day that we stopped external flights into this country, there was a lockdown. The fact that you could move freely in Ghana, there's going to be...
That's a restriction.
It's a restriction. So we had lockdown from then. I believe your question was in relation to the Accra Kumasi lockdown.
Yes, specifically.
And that lockdown, I'm saying, had to give you, it was done for specific, it was the epicenter, you needed to get some information, you needed to get some data. We haven't done enough tests to come to that conclusion. We lost a week of that, doing not very much. And then in the second week, we kind of picked up and started doing, but you needed a little bit more time to do a lot more tests. And that's why I'm keen to know when Noguchi found the polling process, which means they can do a lot more tests and therefore would have been easier to do a lot more tests and get a lot more samples and then get a better idea what is happening. But I think that's why we in the COVID team think it was premature. And and we pray not, the decision is not right, then it becomes dangerous. Because if it turns, as I've told you, that this virus is a bad boy, and he starts showing us his true colors in different ways, then government has put itself in a difficult position. But forget government, we in Ghana
all of us
have a problem.
all of us. But the president said this decision was based on science and data.
Well, that is why people started challenging the figures. And in terms of the numbers that we are talking about, it's not sufficient data to actually say that you can make, or some believe, the specialists, that you make certain decisions, especially when the figure is still escalating. And it's not, you can't even draw the graph to say that, look, it's moving at a slower rate. That's not what is happening. It's actually still going up. So if even on a lockdown it's going up, then where is the science? What science are we using to make?
Do you foresee us going into a full lockdown? Because that's the speculation in town now. People are saying, listen, this is just a 1 week off sort of from the lockdown. Get your act together. We are going to be faced with a situation where we would have to actually completely now lock down the whole country. Do you see that happening?
I don't want to preempt or be the bearer of news or bad news per se. We have looked at the figures. We are not convinced that the figures can be relied on totally, for the reasons I've already outlined. So it would be wrong for us to begin to make decisions on figures we are not totally comfortable with, notwithstanding all the explanations that have been given as to figures. We are not comfortable. That's why I'm saying they should give us all the figures, what they know, or send us we can send them a questionnaire if they, or whatever. We want, there's a lot we need to know to begin to understand better how the decision was reached.
Was arrived at. Okay.
Because at the moment, what we know, based on even the figures that we say we don't necessarily agree with, do not give us the confidence that this decision could have been made. But once you put on the end of your decision making the hardship and effect it has on the people, especially at the lower end, then it justifies the whole reason for the lockdown. Because now you have moved from science, you're moving to social science. If I can put it that way, as in CSI he was able to tell us that there are different types of sciences. Okay, we hear. So you've now moved into social sciences, and if you've gone into that era, then it's always justified. And you justify it because, yes, we, in the kind of culture we have, people at the lower end live from day to day. The longer you keep them down, and then even on the global side or the national side, all the indices show that our businesses were suffering. One of our rating agencies had then rated the forecast as negative. It's not surprising that the moment that was done, the following day, the lockdown was lifted. So if you start looking at all those other economic factors, but I just listened recently to I think the governor of New York, where people were trying to raise the issue of social interventions against, and he kept saying, whatever you think in terms of the economics, death is not an option. So when you weigh it with death, it then is zero. And he is dealing with a lot of death. So he's not looking at the cost. He just wants to find a way to stop it. So I'm locking you down. Or I'm till such time that, because you will try and find a way to feed you. You know your business will collapse. Yes. But you'll be alive to try again to start another business. But if you're not alive,
or you won't die on my watch.
Exactly. So the balance is a difficult one. But let's pray that the gamble pays off, because actually from where many of us are sitting, it's almost a gamble in terms of, okay, let's see where we go, because you don't know enough about the virus
to take a decision like this
at this stage.
To take a decision like
so that is our position.
I would want us to end our conversation on, I mean, you've elaborated on the alternative. You've done that throughout the course of this conversation. You've done that. You've brought it in every now and then in different aspects. But I would want you to sort of intrigue us in a crack saying. Put it all together for us. But let's read the messages that have come in. Then we'll end the show on that note. You telling us what the NDC's alternative would have been, you know, or is. Let's look at it that way. Okay, so this one says, good evening, Ms. Pratt. Tell Mr. Segbefia we are grateful for the good work he and his team are doing for Mother Ghana. May God richly bless them. His name is AB from Anaji in Accra. He says again, good evening, Ms. Pratt. Today is the first time I'm watching a program like this on the couch. Hey. Thank you for African TV, and I hope we see more of its kind. Again, AB in Anaji. AB, keep watching, keep watching. Okay, this one says, good evening, Amma and your panel. I'm impressed with the way Mr. Segbefia is tackling the issues. In fact, we need people like him in situations like this to move our Mother Ghana forward. May God save us from this deadly virus. His name is Edward from Navongo. This one says, okay, you're sending us pictures. I can't download the pictures. This one says, whoa, okay. Okay, it's too long. I'm sorry. If you could just summarize, that would be great. Summarize. Okay, this one says, the team in charge of the remedy of the pandemic are helping the government. Cases identified in Eastern region should be given serious treatment. Mr. Segbefia, thank you for this presentation. Thank you from Cosmos. Okay, Cosmos, you send that in again. This one says, good evening to you all. Thumbs up to your guest for taking his time to explain the facts needed to be considered as a country. Ghana has politicized everything to the extent that human life means nothing. This one goes to the government. Please forget all your political illusions and consider alternative means to curb this pandemic. His name is Armstrong from Tema. This one says, I'm Lizzie from Dansoman, and I suggest the border should have been closed a long time. The spread would not have been like this. This one says, AU Farouk in Tamale North. Good evening to you all. Government must provide the face masks to the public before making it compulsory for use. Yeah, I agree with you. This one says, hi, madam. Tell the MPP Ghanaians are not fools. This is the food they gave to my father for only 2 days out of the 3 weeks that we stayed at home. His name is Nanajiman in Kumasi. Nanajiman, unfortunately, I can't download. I see you sent something. I'm sure by the time the show closes, it would have downloaded, but now I can't see it. Hopefully, I'll see it later. This one says, MPP has totally failed. You didn't add your name. This one says, good evening. The confusion in the public domain on the number of the tests and the number of people tested is the doing of the COVID-19 management team. Vacuum within communication leaves room for speculation, suspicion, and doubt. His name is Samuel Akwafu Jr. in Apam. This one says, the media should ask Dr. Insias Asari some good questions because he was empathic of the project. Why say it's from WHO? Listen to the program again. His name is Barnabas in Wenchi. This one says, hi, madam. I'm always enjoying your program every day. God bless you. Keep the fire burning. His name is Samuel Atia from Arigu in the Northeast region. Thank you so much, Samuel. Please do stay watching. This one says, good evening. How I wish the MPP guys will learn from you, but because they have always said we have the men, their so-called men have turned to women. Disagree. Honorable, teach them. They will learn from you. I'm always proud of you. His name is Ali Bashiru from Polu Kofe in the Volta region. What's the name again? Ali Bashiru. Listen, women are just as competent. Don't say that. This one says, good evening. God bless you for this program. Thank you. God bless you too. This one says, please ask Mr. Segbefia this question. Does the NDC's team get information from what's happening in KCCR and Noguchi Lab? The name is Anj, TUC Kumasi. I don't understand. Okay.
We don't, I mean, we the information we have is what everybody has. We don't get separate information from the particular testing centers, no. We go with the figures the public has.
Same as everybody
Exactly.
else. Okay, I think
and the
I'm
media
done.
are also asking the same questions.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Yeah.
We are only
Yeah.
deducing from the questions that are coming from specialists and people in the field as well as the media.
Yeah.
Because things were not adding up. Yeah. It's as simple as that.
Simple as that. At time is that. But I mean, you have to tell us what the alternative is. What's your alternative?
I don't think that you have a. Well,
let's do summary. I've been asking the viewers to do a summary with a.
The first thing we would have done to create some unity on this, or I just saying we would have thought about, was to publicly make the president visit all the former presidents. And be seen to be briefing them on the issue that happened. You know, I learned that when Professor Mills, we had the first issue with Côte d'Ivoire. And he called all the former presidents and sat down, because now it became a national issue. Once you do that, even if it's individual, but you're seen to have gone to all of them, people begin to know that now we are looking at Ghana, because you have heads of state from both of the political parties. And it would have brought a certain calmness to the playing field. I thought that was an opportunity lost. So that is the starting point. Then we would have quickly reviewed where you had been left off with the Ebola things and call us in as political party. Don't go solo. Drag us all in. This is an issue. You've been there before. What are your views? What happened? Who was in charge of this? How did you deal with Ebola? Don't assume that because there's a technocrats out there and therefore you can get all the information, you not call anybody else. But that becomes political. So you make a political decision whether you prefer to go down that road or not. And if you've made the decision that you're not going to go down that road, fortunately we gave you an open door, because we formed the technical team and we are able to pass on information to you as receive it. But we are not part of your decision making process. All decisions, let me be clear about this, are government decisions. And that is right. Government must make the decision. But we only advise, or we only send papers. We don't sit down at the table and say, they bring, and then we all decide the decisions. That way, we have no buy-in. We can only give you what...
I mean, we can't hold you accountable when
we are
things
not
go
accountable.
wrong.
No. So you go with the credit and the deficit. Because at some point, this type of thing is political. Whether you like it or not, how you deal with it, with the outcome of it, will have a political impact. But we shan't play the politics now. Now is to solve the problem. But it will have a political impact. Because if people's businesses collapse, people are hungry. So you've got to know how, and you've made a decision. The decision is we'll go solo. Okay, fine. But I don't think we would have done that. Then once you have those plans in place, there should be massive training ongoing. The training is key, and the education is even much more important. And the education, you know, we had 40 something odd people who went for Ebola. They left Ghana, went to and helped, and they all came back alive. We didn't lose one. The president, Mahama, at the time, visited all the countries that were involved, took a team. People were very like, whoa, he's going to bring Ebola. He didn't. It was one of the greatest leadership issues that President Mahama ever did. Because he diffused the stigmatization issue for those countries. Are we handling the information of our people who may have been senior, who have the illness, and not mentioning it? Has that not created more stigmatization?
We don't even know those who have it publicly.
So it is now
there's no face.
It has become an issue. Why have we allowed it to get to the point where people are there's no, you can get them recover. We have only 9 people, excuse me, and with all due respect to those who have lost lives, our condolences to the families. But when I'm talking now statistics, we've lost only 9 lives. Only because of statistics, not because every life is important to somebody.
To the whole population of the whole country.
So I beg to be forgiven. Or I should just say we've lost 9 lives. I won't put the word only. So when you look at it statistically, then you have to say we shouldn't be getting the level of stigma that we are trying to create. And That is a leadership thing that has been dealt with by government.
Time is up.
Okay, I'm so sorry.
Our time is up. Our time is up. But this is actually the meat of the conversation. It means you need to come back.
I hear you.
Great. So this has been our conversation. Thank you for joining in the conversation. Thank you for sending in your views and your comments. But I don't think that, we've really exhausted what we had to. So we'll come back to this topic. It's very important to me because whether we like it or not, COVID-19, we are going to defeat it. December is just around the corner. And I hope that this is one of the issues that informs who we decide to take us forward, going forward. Thank you for watching us. See you tomorrow. Have a lovely, lovely evening. Thank you so much, sir, for making time. Thank you. We are so grateful. Yeah. Bye. Please don't hang up.